Okay, here we go. Well, I decided to start my own news channel um, or news network. Now, I'm not going to come on with a bunch of conspiracy theories and a lot of um, black, white, blue, or green issues. I'm going to start with the psychology of the human race. Now, I have no background in any of the stuff that I'm speaking about. I have no college degrees in any of the stuff that I'm speaking about. I'm just a regular citizen that's made observations over the last 10 to 15 years about what I see going on in society. One of the issues that I see that is plaguing the planet in relation to culture, racism, economics, poverty, is the lack of social therapy. So what I want to try to do with my channel, and you can subscribe if you like, is to start to try to give some type of therapeutic advice to not only the Asiatic or melanated people of the planet, which include the so-called blacks, the so-called Native Americans, the so-called Hispanic, Latino communities, as well as the Caucasian, Eurocentric population of the planet. Now, when we look at our history, and we look at the onset of the planet, and we look at our history, what we find is there was a particular group of people that supposedly trace their lineage back to the very first humans on this planet. A lot of people have strong beliefs about that, and a lot of people have staked a lot of research and hours of archaeology into uncovering different types of artifacts, different types of literature from ancient times. But one of the limitations we have in all of our research is that we're still humans in a physical body and what we refer to as a third dimensional parameter. So once we get to the edge of that third dimensional parameter, everything beyond that is speculation. So nobody can truly say without a shadow of a doubt who the first people on the planet were. Now, some ethnic cultures, the evidence as to who they are goes back much further than a lot of other ethnic origins seem or to appear to be. But there's been speculations that even that most ancient of those civilizations supposedly derive their origin from, yes, some people believe, other planets. Now, if we fast forward up to the times that we're dealing in today, in 2018, those debates can go on for hundreds and hundreds of years, and in fact, they have gone on for hundreds and hundreds of years. But the reality is that we exist in a time and space, in a social and current situation right now, where we have to deal with our problems right now at hand. I sit at home and I watch all these different news networks, ABC's 1 through 3, C+4, 5+6. The list goes on and on of all the different news networks that we have out there, and that we absorb our information about the world around us from. I can definitely go into the agenda and the way that the news is portrayed to us by secret cabals. I can go into many, many different theories about the way the panels are set up and the ideology behind setting certain people up on these panels to have these political debates or discussions, knowing that they're going to argue and fight and quarrel amongst themselves. And while the rest of the world sits at home and they watch this play out, all along orchestrated by men and women behind the scenes, they believe through their orchestration, it perpetuates an ideology that they're continuing to try to reinforce in society. And you see this on a lot of the news networks. You'll get this person next to this person, next to this person, knowing that these three people on this panel are going to start arguing and fighting, bickering back and forth, therefore reinforcing the projected subconscious conditioning of that particular race or that particular stereotype. So that's one of the things that I want us to really be aware of as we watch these news networks, as we watch these different programs, is that certain people are put on these particular panels to simply argue and fight. And what happens is the topic at hand gets muddled, gets confused, and the person that they're trying to raise up or supposedly portray as the proper race or the ethical race oversees this dogfight, and then in the end he calls the shots, tells them to quit, and they flash to a commercial. And we never get a chance to find out what the answer or what the solution was to whatever issue they were talking about, a topic they were trying to dissect. The only thing we take away from that is that we saw a bunch of people arguing and fighting, more than likely of the same race, and it reinforces our stereotype that these people can't get along with each other. All right. So I said all that to say this. We have to, when we observe things in this society, we definitely have to make sure that we're looking behind the scenes to see what the agenda is to the people that set up the play that we visually see, behind the scenes what their agenda is and what they want us to subconsciously take in when we watch and we observe these programs on television. The next thing I want to talk about is we hear a lot about prison reform. We hear a lot about social reform. We hear a lot about poverty in inner cities, affluency in upper class cities, and everything that spans in the gamut in between. But one of the things that I want to talk about today, coming from a non-biased perspective, is I want to deal in reality, and I want to deal in matter-of-fact conditions and matter-of-fact scenarios. What I've realized about a lot of the local news networks and a lot of the dialogue that we've been having on this planet for the last 100 years is that at the end of the day, 99.9% of the dialogue that is supposed to be orchestrated to solve a problem never gets resolved. It turns into typical dialogue. We hear a lot of our leaders and men that have raised themselves up in this current society say, well, you know, they need to do this, or they should have done that, or we need to do this, or we're this way, or we're that way. And I hear all the descriptions of our negative aspects. I think the world knows now. The world knows what our negative characteristics are. I think the world knows what our illnesses are, socially, ethically. I think the world knows that. across every demographic. I think everybody has figured that out because it's been blared and blasted enough. But I think we're coming into a day now to where we need to start broadcasting solutions. What are the solutions? So this is what I want this network to be about, is solutions. So with that being said, let's talk about the first topic I want to touch on is our economic crisis here in America. And I'm sure that these issues are going around the world, but I want to focus on the economic issues here in America. One of the things that I notice about a majority of the wealth that's being distributed throughout this country is it's going, for the most part, to a small demographic group of people. And I think a lot of you guys out there are aware of who that particular demographic of the global amount of wealth is going to. Now, one of the problems with that is you ask yourself, what was the infrastructure that allowed that type of wealth to be built? And what is the mechanism and the agenda of that global wealth and how it is distributed around the world? So when we look at history, when we go back and we look at the infrastructure of the cotton industry, the steel and the railroad industry, when we look at the textile industry, when we look at the multiple industries that has ultimately built the financial infrastructure to what we refer to as America, what we see is we see a varied group or demographic of people, of men and women, who at the very onset contributed to building the very fundamental core pillars of our global industry. Whether it be the textile, the railroad industry, the technological advancement and different types of inventions, and the list goes on and on. But when these industries and their foundation were established and were officially made erect, we started to generate millions and billions and trillions of dollars from these different industries. But one of the problems that we see is that the profit and the residuals that came from these industries have only gone to the men and women who oversaw the building of these industries, not them personally building these industries themselves, but oversaw and monitored the people that helped to build the American infrastructure. And with the residuals that came from these different industries has gone back to the people that oversaw the construction of these industries, siblings, their children, and their ancestors, on down the line right up to today. And that wealth is being distributed amongst them and them alone. Now, when I speak about this, I'm speaking about this from a global perspective. I'm not speaking about this from an isolated perspective. I'm speaking about this from a global perspective. So when you really start to think about wealth here in America, we see that certain people have enjoyed the residual return from these multi-billion-dollar industries that were built hundreds of years ago, but the residuals are going to them and to them alone. And these residuals went in to building corporate structure, political structure, and other industrial structures. But when you trace the money trail and the labor that actually went into building these industries, it goes back to a totally different demographic of people that never got their residuals. And like I said, we're at a point now where we don't have to mention color anymore. We don't have to mention specific racial groups anymore. The world knows who they are and what's going on now. So I think one of the most important things is to level the playing field monetarily. And until the playing field is leveled monetarily, there's going to continue to be poverty. There's going to continue to be starvation. There's going to continue to be crime. There's going to continue to be a lack of education. And there's going to continue to be a constant feuding between these different racial demographics. The residual income that has come from these global billion-dollar industries that we exist in today, that makes up our American economy, is going to a specific group or demographic of men and women globally. And the original demographic that built the original infrastructure has received little to no monetary upliftment. Now, if we really think about that, that stems to all of our issues. It's tied into all of our problems. And will it solve all the world's problems? No. But until we level the playing field, our dialogue is fruitless. And I think the powers that be, they know that. I think they know that. I think they assume that if we can talk about it long enough, we'll be comfortable with the dialogue and we'll walk away still having nothing, but we'll be satisfied with the dialogue. I think the days for dialogue are done. I think we need to come up with solutions, and I think those solutions need to be now. We look at the athletes around this world making hundreds of millions of dollars. But I have yet to see any collective group come together and say, we're going to put together a banking system or a investment system company that's going to benefit not only the demographic that needs the help, but those in general that need the help. It's not happening. And if it is, it's on a very minuscule level. Now I know a lot of you out there are saying, well, what have you done? What are you doing? I'm talking about it right now. I hope that from this video, I can help spearhead this movement. This is my first YouTube video. My very first one. I've never been interested in social media. I'm pretty much a recluse, so to speak. I keep to myself. I generate my own capital, and I mind my own business, and I plan for my own future. But day after day, year after year, month after month, I watch television, I watch the racial dialogue, I watch the economic disparity, I watch the starvation going on around the planet. And I say to myself, is this going to be my life before whatever happens? And so I decided to approach the world in the only way I know how, seeing that we are in a day of social media where what you say can be shown to the people around the world. And so I wanted to start out by saying some of the observations and some of the things that I have observed and I think would help benefit our planet. It's amazing to me that we can spend billions and billions of dollars, trillions of dollars, on black budget projects, space programs and the like, advanced aeronautical engineering and technology. But we still have people starving on this planet. We still have babies that are lying in ditches now as we speak, sucking on rocks for protein as we speak. It breaks my heart. And I'm convinced that the racial disparities that we have on this planet, they're never going to end. We might as well stop the dialogue. If I was a humanoid or an alien or a creature from another planet, and I came down to this planet Earth, and I monitored, just from an objective perspective, all the stuff that was going on this planet for 200-300 years, what we will find is that this same racial dialogue has been going on for 200-300 years. And relatively the same amount of people are in poverty. The same amount of demographics are struggling, being imprisoned, month after month, year after year, day after day. But when we start to look at the very system that we live in, what we start to see is that this system, this so-called justice system, this so-called political system, seems to only be working for certain people. It seems to only be clicking and working for the most part for certain people. Why is that? Was that by design? Was it by just chance? No. It was by strategic and well thought out design. I've accepted that fact now. I've accepted that fact. That we live in a construct that has been methodically put together for hundreds of years to benefit those in which it was created for, and to suppress those in which it was created for not. So how do we survive in a system like that? Almost as if you took a lizard, and you dropped it into an ant bed, or a beetle, or you dropped it into an ant bed of millions of ants. And that beetle is fighting to find its way. It's fighting to get its clarity. It's fighting to get its balance. It's fighting to find reason. It's fighting to find its self-worth. It's fighting every day. It's struggling to make it out, to make it around the corner, to find land, to find a place where it can be free, where it can be independent of harm, free to live and to thrive. Most of us so-called Americans are that beetle dropped into that ant bed. And the gross reality is that we will be in this ant bed for the rest of our lives on this planet. I think the powers that be, they understand that evolution takes place on many levels, on subatomic levels, as well as on cosmic levels. And this imbalance and this injustice that has been orchestrated from hundreds of years ago is slowly, even though we may not be able to see it on the surface, is balancing itself back out. And with that, they know that there's nothing that they really can do about it. And the people that you arrest behind closed doors never actually go to prison, because they take them out of the spotlight of the cameras, and behind closed doors, they tell them to leave the country, or they tell them to go into hiding. They never go to prison. On one side of the camera, they appear to be tried before a court of law. But when the camera is not there, they're being told by their peers to, good job, well done. Take a trip, move out of the country, lay low, and human consciousness will forget about this like we do everything else. That's the reality of this world we live in, where there's an aspect of what we see on the surface, and then there's a reality of things that take place behind closed doors. So how do you survive in a system like this, where the strings and the mechanisms are subliminally and subconsciously enforced and totally unseen to the naked eye? How do you survive? How do you group and gather? How do you orchestrate and build, when the very foundation that you attempt to build on is being monitored, controlled, and manipulated by those that seek to keep you oppressed? How do you survive? Well, hopefully on our program in the next coming months, weeks, years, we will start to delve into some of these issues and how do we truly resolve them. I only want answers so that we can come up with solutions. I don't care about dialogue anymore, because dialogue gets us nowhere. At the end of the day, it's just a bunch of talk back and forth. This person spewing what they think, that person spewing what they think, and it's really all about who has the last say so and who walks away feeling good about themselves and their ego gets stroked. But as far as solutions, nothing is done. And one of the things that led me to making this video is that I watch television and I look at even the stars and then the entertainers, people that are making millions of dollars, that are still saying, hey, I'm still oppressed. What has to happen? Did some war have to break out? Did some major global catastrophe have to ensue? So you give me your comments. No, better yet, you send me ideas that you think could work to bring equality back to our society. And then once the playing fields are leveled, then we can have a true dialogue. I thank you for listening. Stay tuned to our next video. We will wait for the response and some of the answers, some of the possible solutions, truly to some of our world's issues. And we will see you again next week. Have a nice day. And remember, if not you, who?